What's that? Howls from the woods. Movement under the water. Something you notice out of the corner of your eye, but you look, it's gone. This is Cryptid Talk. Hello, everyone. Take two with this. I hope everyone's having a good day. Thankfully, I didn't get too far into the last recording, like a couple minutes, but my internet cut out, and unfortunately, it made me restart. And thankfully, it wasn't that far in. Unfortunately, it wasn't seem like it was able to save what was there before. But I hope everyone's doing well today. I'll try to get back to where I was before. Um, but yeah, it's as of May 10th. It has been 1 year of the podcast. So hooray! Thank you for all the support and views and everything like that everyone has given so far. We may be small and slow growing, but over time, I'm hoping the podcast will grow into something really, really great. Better than it already is now, to something fantastic, something spectacular, and something mind blowing. Nothing crazy that will get me like a TV show or anything like that. But I mean, hey, we're doing it for the funsies, right? Um, yeah. I guess before we get into it, about a month from now, I will be back from my BFRO expedition, in Pennsylvania. And in the part of Pennsylvania where I'll be, supposedly there are elk that do live there. Elk was a lot more widespread a long time ago because hunting and all that. They are a lot less spread out. They're a lot less in areas. They're more so like the west coast of the U.S. and Canada. But there are some. There are some of them in parts of northern Pennsylvania. So hopefully that maybe I'll see one. Obviously, I know it's just an elk. It's obviously nothing crazy or anything. Something that's like that's just like a deer for most people. But me, like I've never seen an elk in person. Sure, I'll probably be like, all right, cool. I've seen elk once. Okay, cool. I've seen it. Kind of thing. But it would be pretty cool to hopefully see an elk when I'm up there, and hopefully maybe I'll even maybe see a bear. I've never seen a wild black bear in nature. Obviously, I've had at the zoo, but never in nature. And of course, even luckier, hopefully I'll see a Bigfoot. Obviously, we will see. These BFRO expeditions are always planned in mind of hopefully encountering something. It is never guaranteed. The chances are better than probably others areas, but like the creatures themselves, you can plan so much, but then you can only do so much planning unless they are not there. If they are there, great. If not, then there's only so much you can do. I've heard of a lot of different BFRO expeditions that have had no activity at all. We were just a lucky expedition. My last Pennsylvania one actually have actually stuff happen. So we were just lucky people to make for that to happen. And yeah, and of course, I guess we'll start talking a little bit now. In August of this year, goodness, hold on, let me go do Central Parent. The festival that I was at last year, the Central PA Bigfoot and Cryptid Festival, August 9th. I will be there. We are working on some new fun product to have, and so we're trying out a bunch of different things. We're gonna try just a few things here and there, not too many of one thing, just maybe 3 or 5 or so, just to see what people like, what sells, what doesn't sell, what do we focus more on next time, kind of thing. So a lot of this is gonna be a trial run for stuff that we will maybe we'll do more in the future. But so if you want to see some really cool, unique things, and just say hi to me in general too. Make sure you come on by, because it's actually not in Elysburg, Pennsylvania this year. They changed the location. It's actually in the Susquehanna Valley Mall in Selins Grove, PA. So it's going to be indoors in a mall. And we're really interested how that's going to work out, because it's inside of a mall and everything. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see how it will go. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend, if it's about like 30 or so minutes west of where it was last time, but definitely for sure, I highly recommend, coming out the festival. Even though it was outdoors, we had a little bit of rainy part near the end. It was a fantastic time. A lot of people came out, a lot of awesome vendors. Of course, we were there and everything like that. So if you want to, meet me in person, if you're hearing about me, outside of, of seeing me last year, I definitely recommend, coming by, again this year. There's a lot of, I'm looking at the website right now. There's a lot of good vendors that are showing up here. Some I remember last year, some new ones, and yeah. So I definitely would recommend coming to this one for sure. If you are going to go to the festival, go to the. I'll put the website on the Facebook page, but go to the website and, pre-order a shirt. Follow their Facebook page as well. Follow and, pre-order their shirts that they will have at the festival. They're a really cool, like red camo kind of looking thing, and so I definitely would look into there and definitely support it for sure, because it definitely is going to be a lot of fun. And oh boy, we had so much fun last year, minus the rain. But I cannot wait to go back again, next year. Um, Anything else before we get into it? I don't think I got anything else. I mean, there's other stuff that we'll get into, but nothing else that does involve that. So today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. That normally we'd always talk about, specifically like cryptid or cryptids or something like that. In the past, I've always talked about, like, all right, well, obviously at some point there are only so many good cryptids that there's a lot of information on, or some cryptid you can do like multiple for some episode and one for one episode and stuff like that. And then I also thought, but we also need to talk about like specific events and everything. And so I had a tough time picking between this event or another event, but because the anniversary of it was last year, or the 100th anniversary of it was last year, I think we should probably do one of the most one of the like up there. Well, I won't get super duper into that part yet, but one of the most important Bigfoot stories, legends, of all time. Now, I'm not saying it is the biggest one, but one of the most, and that is the incident at Ape Canyon. Now, Ape Canyon is probably one of the oldest, oldest and very well documented to a report of a Bigfoot encounter like to date, and just in how extravagant the whole event was. This haul happened at Mount St. Helens, Washington, in the summer of 1924. Let me get to the information page. There we go. Ape Canyon is a gorge along the edge of the Plains of Abraham on the southeast shoulder of Mount St. Helens in Washington. And so what happened there? Well, I'm gonna go. We're gonna kind of go through here and there, and just kind of go from there. Okay. In the summer of 1924, 5 prospectors went up to the area in search of gold. Actually, you know what? I'm surprised I didn't think about this now. When did the gold rush start? Okay, so before all this, actually, the gold rush started in January 24th, 1848, and that was when everyone everyone came to California in search of riches and gold, because everyone wanted to hit their mark and become famous and rich from all the gold that was being found up there. And these 5 fellows were no different. They went up to they were into a specific area to hopefully in search of gold. And these people, the miners that were involved in this incident, was Fred Beck, Marion Smith, Roy Smith, Marion's son, Gabe Lefevre, and John Peterson. These men these were the men that were all involved in this story that even to this day is still an amazing story. So what happened? So I won't be able to go through all the exact different information for it because I'm definitely not a whiz on it. But our friend and guest was on here back in November, Mark Marcel. If you remember from the episode, what is? Of course, you try to sneeze and then you kind of mess up. You're talking a little bit, but he's the whiz when it comes to everything Ape Canyon. But we'll get to him and all that stuff in a little bit. So these men went searching for a land to an area where they could be able to start mining gold. It's still part of the gold rush, and they wanted a piece of it. Now if I remember correctly, I actually found this out a little bit later, but supposedly when they were looking for looking for where they would be able to start mining gold with a site, they were told by a Native American man that to follow the clouds and they will point you toward them. And in simple point, apparently like an arrow or something appeared in the clouds pointing at where they needed to be. And after a long adventuring and hiking, they finally got to the spot. Mind you, though, the area where the cabin site is very, very, very hard to get to. Like, extremely. There's a picture of this makeshift ladder they had to make out of the local wood nearby, and to where they could get down to certain areas. Today, it would be like dangerous as all hell to go there in general, but especially without any sort of rope or any harness or rope equipment to get down to it, like safer. The rocks around there are very brittle and can easily slip out from under you just from touching it and everything. And so it's a very hard area to get to. And so obviously people, they're like, after all their journey and everything else like that, the five men finally got to the area and started making, it started preparing for what they needed to do. They made a very big log cabin, because obviously I've heard this story obviously beforehand. The men in the cabin, everything happened. But seeing some newer pictures of the cabin and new pictures that have came to light within the past, couple years, actually within just the past year, pictures that has never seen the light of day. Because there are some pictures that have gone that everyone involved in this incident is pretty aware of. There's the two men sitting there, in front of the cabin, a few pictures here and there, but not much. But recently, more pictures have come to light for the first time, and it's spectacular, and showing the actual size of the cabin. The cabin was pretty big because where they also decided to build the cabin and where the mine was and everything is not on very, very flat land. So it's not like they went to a nice little flat, nice little big open area where they could, no problem kind of thing. They kind of made it on a slope in a way. They obviously cleared out some area because back then it was very, very easy to get a hold of dynamite. So they would start, holding up dynamite. They would start using dynamite to, blow away edges of the cliff and everything. So to give them a lot more of a solid ground than, so that they would have room to work on. So, after all that, they made this really impressive cabin, and, they started, looking around, where, in the little area where they found gold. So, for the first few days, it was pretty normal. They had a lot of equipment to, start, mining the ore and start, just getting all the gold in general. Hold on, let's see. There we go. Yeah, And so on one of the days, one of the miners went out and saw a very strange creature. Let's see, 19 inches long. So before it was actually before that, they around the camp and around the area, they started seeing these weird tracks. One of the huntsmen, um, huh. Well, would notice these strange track, and obviously a great woodsman, was very unsure about some of the stuff that the track that they were seeing, because the track was about 19 inches long and looked very humanoid. But of course, they shouldn't, this shouldn't, be a thing. Okay. So after some time, one of the something's not right here. Now I'm looking at it. I feel like I'm missing some information. I think I got something messed up with this. So, anywho, I know I should confirm this. Anywho, so when one of the miners went out and by this little body of water, he was walking and above in front of him saw a strange creature next to him behind a tree. The man, paralyzed in fear, never seen anything like this before. This big old hairy creature standing tall, thinking it might have been some bear, but no, the face just didn't look right. And then afterwards, so and of course, like a lot of people, startled by something they don't have never seen before, they don't understand, took his gun, I believe his revolver, and took a shot at the creature. But the creature was hiding behind a tree, and after it hit the tree, the creature then ran off. Went back and told everyone, and they're like, so I saw this creature, this weird, strange thing. Of course, obviously, like a lot of people, especially early on in these days, no one believed them. Definitely. Actually, yeah, no one definitely believed them for sure. Hold on, I need to check something real quick. Yeah, because something is. I feel like come on. The names of the miners at Ape Canyon. Hopefully everyone is doing well today. Sorry, there's something. Okay, Leroy. That's so weird. Why is this saying Hank? All right. Hopefully, this possibly chance some of this information may be incorrect. God dang it. Anyhow, so obviously, nothing happens. Creature. The creature walked off. Throughout that time, they would hear noises here and there. These strange, like whoops, these strange noises like howls at night. Wooden, like wood hitting wood. All these strange noises, but nothing really came of it. Before and after they saw this. Then two of them then went off walking, because I guess the one miner was a little scared and came back, and came out with someone else to walk with them. Saw the creature again, and they did three. They both shot. They both had bigger guns this time, realizing that there's something else up here besides just the traditional animals like mountain lions and everything, like bears. So they saw this creature and they shot it. They shot it 3 times and it hit it in the chest. The creature then apparently ran for a little bit, fell, and then stumbled a little bit, and then fell into an inaccessible canyon. So they're never really able to get a good look at this thing. Of course, they ran back to the cabin. The people, the other miners are, so the cabin asked them what happened, what's going on here, and they're like, everything that happened, and they all decided to bunker in for the night. Well, around that time, later at night, is when all hell broke loose. Because next thing you know, there are these bangs, against the cabin, and all these weird, all these howls and screams and everything, all coming around them, not just in one spot, but all around them. They are pretty much in a way surrounded by at least multiple of these creatures that they saw. and it sounded like they were throwing like these big old rocks or boulders at their cabin. It also sounded like they would come up and like hit a little bit, but mostly they were just throwing these big old, like, these weren't just like rocks. Apparently they described them as they were boulders. These boulders came down and bam, 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 hitting the cabin, and it happened throughout the entire night. Oh, and they would, of course, it would still be dark, but these men would try to would look out the windows of the cabin, and would see these big creatures being silhouetted, being lit up by the stars and moon behind them. Could just see these big things. There were a bunch of them, and so the attack continued, of them going bang, 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 just all throughout the night. And these men were terrified. They would try to take shots at these creatures, trying to get them to stop, but it just didn't. It didn't. They just kept going, and they just kept going, throwing rocks at the cabin and just scaring the hell out of the miners. And this went on all night. And as the night became and as night became dawn and the sun started coming up, everything kind of just stopped. The sounds, the rocks being thrown, everything just stopped, as these things then retreated when sunlight came. And as soon as the sunlight came and they were able to see everything, they got their stuff, their immediate stuff, and they left. They left everything behind, everything for a chance of getting gold, or more gold, or any gold at all, and they just left. They abandoned the site and just went home. And when they got back, these men were terrified. They were pale. They were shaking. They were so disturbed and upset from what happened that obviously people like what happened? Like, what happened to you guys? And ultimately, they all came down to mountain devils. That's what they described them as. They were attacked. They were pretty much attacked by by mountain devils. Newspapers started picking up the story like hotcakes, where a lot of people, were the headlines for it, were the two pictures, the two men standing there. They saw devils, these strong, strange creatures they've never seen before, attacking them, with their the boulders, and hitting the cabin and everything. And the thing is that they were actually only at this cabin for a week, and they were actually planned to be there for 3 months, which really surprised a lot of people, because like, this apparently was supposedly a good spot where there's supposed to be a lot of gold. No one had touched it before, and next thing you know, there are these men that were going up there to get gold and came back with nothing. Like, they came back with even less what they left with. All their equipment, they left behind. They just left it there. I believe there were times to go back, but they came back with a lot more people to try to get some stuff back. But a lot of things that they just left there. The cabin and everything. And so they were only there for they weren't there for very long. But of course, people were very skeptical about the story, because like these giant ape men, these mountain devils, like no, this can't be true. Like, obviously, you guys must have saw bears or stuff like that. Well, interesting fact. So this happened in 1924. In 1921 is when the whole idea and the thought of the Yeti was first found out in the Western world, when the Himalayan expedition came back with that possible foot imprint in the snow of a Yeti next to an ice pick, and and then that's what came, the abominable snowman, the Yeti. So this happened in 1921. So hairy men being a thing wasn't completely new. What was new, though, that and here, but they're supposed to be over in the Himalayas. So at first, everyone thought that the Bigfoot, whatever creatures you want to call them, hairy men, were only in the Himalayas, because that's where people are first hearing about them, these hairy men that live in the mountains of the Himalayas. So for a while, up until before the name Bigfoot and Sasquatch became a thing, everyone was actually calling them like Yetis. Like, oh, you saw a Yeti, or you saw a hairy man, or something like that. But Yeti was actually the first technical name they actually got in the, at least for the time being, in the western part of the United States, in the Pacific Northwest. So very interesting thing. I was like, oh, we're gonna go find the Yeti. It's like, wait, no, it's not that. The Yeti is in the Himalayas. Over here, at least, there's like Bigfoot or Sasquatch, or depending on whatever areas you go to. So I thought that was pretty interesting. That for a while they were called Yeti over here, or at least not. They weren't called at least the hairy man, like hairy man or something like that, or wild man. But so yeah, so obviously a lot of skepticism came from the story, like oh, they're just trying to get attention, stuff like that. It's like, well, I don't know, because a lot of the one big defense I think a lot of people had with the miners was because that they, well, how would you say that, they had only been there a week. Everyone knew that they were planning to at least been there for at least 3 months, and everyone knew that these guys are going to come back with good. These guys are come back with a lot of gold. They're going to be real good, but but then they came back with nothing after only being there for such a short time, not the full amount of time they were supposed to be there. And so obviously some people would think that's like, well, if these people, if these some of these men are like, man, these are tough mountain men. Like these are guys that are not scared easily, and like wouldn't just leave an area that hasn't been touched for the possibility of gold, and then just leave coming back with nothing after such a short time. That was the one defense a lot of people at least gave them for sure. So, should we get into that part yet? So obviously, last year, and also, if I'm correct, this happened on July 11th is when the attack happened for Ape Canyon. And last year, July 11th, 2024, was 100-year anniversary of it. Last year, they at the North American Bigfoot Center, with the owner Cliff Barrickman, who's on Finding Bigfoot and a friend of mine, had a Ape Canyon exhibit there. Obviously, there's no point me telling you now, but just for food, fun food for thought. Had a whole Ape Canyon thing there where they showed pictures that people had never seen before, and they had things that Mark had found and other things like that happened in Mount St. Helens and everything. So pretty cool to have that whole event happen. And I wish I was able to go last year, but just the time when it was, I just wouldn't have been able to get there, unfortunately. But yeah, Mark told us that that if we ever come up there, he will house us for free, and if we ever want to go on some crazy adventures up there. So hey, possible future podcast episode for sure at the home of Mark Marcel in the far future. But that'd be pretty fun. Sorry. So what next? So yeah. So okay. So a lot of things that they got hit with, that like, oh, they're telling that people didn't believe them, was that it's like how could someone come up with such a outlandish story like that? Like, it's too crazy to believe in a way. Some of the theories that obviously people thought what really happened was, let's go through the obvious ones real quick. They faked it. That they had got these boulders, placed them around there, and made up a story of like, oh, we got scared out of there. Maybe they were nervous about where they were and stuff like that. Well, such an odd thing to say about men who were there for gold, had planned there to be there for 3 months, where these were tough these are tough outdoorsmen. These are definitely not like city folk. Like, these guys knew what they were doing. The fact that they were able to use dynamite to blow out chunks of the mountain so they could build their cabin on it definitely doesn't sound like someone from the city could do easily. Someone from New York, no, New York City probably couldn't not do that. But these guys were tough, and the fact that the people thought they would fake it, is like, well, why would they fake it? Like, some of these like rocks or boulders, as they describe them, that hit the cabin were not light. These were big. Like, at most, maybe if they really tried, they probably could have rolled some of these down. If they worked together using leverage or anything like that. To make it fall. But that just wasn't the case. Why would they fake this? Why would they risk damage to their cabin? Why would they, after only being there for such a short time, why would they fake a story on why they left to where a chance of they could have struck big with gold? Such an odd thing. Of course, and then of course the next obvious one is, oh, it was bears. That you saw a bear that was standing up and you shot it and then it fell over, kind of thing. Again, these maybe at first, like, oh, that looks like a bear kind of thing. That's the first thought that a lot of people have when they see a Bigfoot, especially if it's being obscured by rocks or trees or bushes. So if something's obscuring it's the full look of it, and you see like this dark brown, dark black thing, you're like, oh, it's a bear. Because for most people they think big creature plus brown or black equals bear. But then after sometimes it moves a bit more, or you see a bit more detail, you're like, that's not a bear. That's got hands. That's got feet. That's got like humanoid features, and that's not a bear. That doesn't have a long bear snout. It's got a squished in face like a human, and it's like that's when everything's like, whoa, wait, whoa, 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 kind of thing. So I feel like at first maybe that's why I thought it was a bear, but then after getting a good look at it and realizing this thing looks humanoid, it's running away on two legs, and it's like that's not a bear. Of course, another one was that some people thought it was a Native American tribes, like ticked off that they were there on their land, and was just trying to scare them away, kind of thing. But of course, again, some of these boulders were not small. They were big. There were a lot of them. These weren't the ones that were just being rolled. They were being like thrown. They were hitting the top of the cabin. Like it just wouldn't be as very possible to get there. And of course, since these men had a tough time as it was just getting up there, other people would have the same thing. Sure, Native Americans would probably be a lot more, used to the land and know how to traverse it and everything. But still, even for them, it's still going to be tricky. It's not going to be easy. So, and then of course another one, which is a bit more outlandish, that apparently they thought it might have been campers or scouts of a nearby camping troop that was up there also on St. Helens. Problem was that I forget the exact distance, but I think it was like from where the miners were and from where these campers were, it was about like 3 to 6 miles uphill from where they would have been, getting all the way up to where these miners were to push these rocks over, make some noises, and then get all the way back down to camp without anyone ever noticing them, that they were gone. Again, these were campers. These were like camper scouts, still kind of probably young. They would have had a tough time, if not impossible time, getting up to that point in that amount of time safely without any sort of injuries or worse happening. It just wouldn't be possible. They would have a tough time as it was, just even in the daytime. Getting up there would have been difficult enough, let alone doing it at nighttime where like flashlights were definitely not a thing or easily accessible, and they're thinking, oh, these teenagers just ran up and messing with these miners. For what reason? Who knows? There's really no real reason on why this would have happened. Ugh. So that was one of the other weird theories that people suggested. It's like, well, obviously that's not true. So I know bear one, sure, maybe at first, but they're like, wait, no, that's not right. So all right. So we're gonna backtrack a little bit to about the actual how this all came to be. Actually, hold on. Before even that, is there anything else I need to say? Actually, yeah. Okay, you know what? We're gonna hold off on that for now because there's more stuff about about it we should actually talk about first. So obviously this so Yeti was brought to the Western world's attention in 1921. The Ape Canyon incident happened in 1924. And then we had the Patterson and Gimlin footage in 1967. So this was still about 40 years before the famous footage of Patty was recorded and was shown to the world. Then in 1980, if people weren't aware, Mount St. Helens actually erupted, causing damage, so much damage to the surrounding area, and just for miles and miles, just destroyed everything with from the eruption. So if you ever try finding a picture of what Mount St. Helens looked like before the eruption to what it looks like now, there's a big chunk of it missing. There really was from this eruption. So of course, then after the eruption, everything got damaged, covered in ash and debris and rock and everything. So finding since then, even before Mount St. Helens erupted, after the miners, I think went back one more time to try to get some things and never came back. After some amount of time, people were not able to find the cabin. It was very, very hard and difficult to find. Oh, excuse me, a little burpee. But that changed in 2013 when our good friend Mark Marcel and friends refound the cabin site after doing a lot of research and going down there itself and everything. They had found the campsite. They had found it, but all was left. There was not much of it left. I think there were just some studs of it because obviously, apparently, there might have been a fire at the cabin before they officially left. But there's nothing. I'm not 100% sure about that. But then, of course, after the Mount St. Helens eruption, that chance of that possibly might have just taken the cabin out. But so everyone had a tough time. But then Mark was able to find it with the help of some friends, and had found some artifacts that showed that was there. They found a spoon. They found some nails that were used. So they found a few little things here and there. Nothing crazy, but that's what they found. Unfortunately, though, nowadays the area is now protected by it's a historical event. Not historical event, but it's a historical location, and if you are seen digging there or any sort of excavation, you get hit with a heavy fine, and you're not allowed to do that. And apparently, to get the authorization to do so and everything, just the excavation equipment itself just to get there is apparently very, very expensive and not very cheap to do. So until the time when that can happen, because Mark has a metal detector that he uses there and sees there is more metal here, there is more stuff, but because it's under the ground, they can't do anything about it. So for the time, all they have is they know where the location is. They got a spoon and some nails and some other little things of metal that were found that were from the cabin itself in the campsite. But then, of course, what about the mine? The mine that they were there for, the mine that they wanted to get all this gold from. Well, the mine when Mark was there, he couldn't find the mine. But it turns out, though, that in 2023, Mark had gotten a hold of some of the more relatives of one of the miners. I think his daughter and her grandsons, and told him about she obviously heard of Ape Canyon, but they've heard of it, but they actually had no idea that it was their family that was part of that story. They had no idea. They were dumbfounded because obviously the father may not have talked about it much. Obviously being terrified and obviously trying to with ridicule and everything, but But when they found out, though, apparently, Mark gave the grandsons all right, this is where it is, good luck kind of thing. And after some searching and everything, in August of 2023, the mine had been found or rediscovered by the grandsons, and apparently where the mine was about 30-60 feet down more in elevation from where the cabin was. So Mark he never went down that far, not thinking it was going to be down there. But lo and behold, it was. And so they had found the mine that the miners had started, but then never finished. And I'm thinking, okay, like I saw the picture beforehand. The mine entrance is pretty small. Obviously, you can't have a big old mine entrance because it has a greater chance of if it collapsing in. But it's a little smaller, it may not be as bad. But what's interesting though that recently it's not officially out in the public yet, but um, during this time of them going back and everything, they had found that there's a group called Small Town Monsters, and they create a lot of documentaries and little film kind of things about Bigfoot and a lot of different things. And they did one for Ape Canyon called the Siege of Ape Canyon. Now it's not available again to the public yet. Mark does have an event that's actually be happening soon. I believe the 22nd. Hold on, let me go to Mark's website real quick. Mark's Facebook page real quick. Here we go. Yep, on May 22nd at the Kings Inn Theater in Washington. So again, this is if you're listening to this and you're over in Washington, go do this. But they're having a world premiere of Ape Canyon at the theater, where people, the people who produce the people from Small Town Monsters are going to be there. Of course, Mark's going to be there. Cliff Barrickman, other Bigfoot royalty and people are going to be at this event for this documentary, and I've seen it. I supported it on Kickstarter for the other for that and the other some other other documentaries that are coming out this year, and I supported 100%. I support. I donated toward it, and anyone who supported it was given a digital copy of it that you could watch, and we watched it, and it was good. It's really good. When I heard that when he told us that Small Town Monsters was making a documentary about the siege of Ape Canyon, how could I not be excited about that? It was so cool. I was so excited, and then watched it, and it was fantastic. So much cool information. Seeing the actual site itself, where the cabin is, and everything. So when it comes, I'll share it on the Facebook page when it comes out. Apparently, it's not coming out on YouTube for a while still, maybe not till like fall. But when it is out, I will share it on the Facebook page. So if you're not on the Facebook page already, I've looked recently. There's like maybe half of the people that are subscribed are following the Facebook page. The other half is not. So I'd highly recommend it. Follow my Facebook page, facebook.com/cryptid talk. I'll be posting a link there of when it comes on YouTube, because it will come on YouTube to free for everyone to watch. I will share it there, and you gotta watch it. It is fantastic. It's so cool, so much good information. It's good to see my all the hard work and that Mark put into it. Because after we watched it, I called him. We had like a 40-minute conversation. Like Mark, that was so cool and everything. He's like, oh, thanks, man, and everything like that. So when it comes out, I will definitely share, because it definitely deserves a watch. Like, get some popcorn, get some snacks, get some nice little, movie food and everything, and sit down and watch this film when it comes out. I will share it, and you guys will all love it. So yeah, so the mine was rediscovered, and so I saw, I've seen the pictures of it, but in the documentary, when they showed actually going into it, they didn't go that deep into the mine. It really wasn't that deep. Like, I'm trying to remember the exact measurements of it, but I would say like they were maybe only 5, maybe 10 feet into the mine. Like, they had only just begun to really dig it out, and because of again, they were only there for a week, and because of the incidents, they left. Something, huh? Okay, that's interesting for sure. And but I mainly I was just more surprised. I'm thinking like, man, it really wasn't that deep. Like, they really didn't get that far at all. And the amount of gold that's probably up there is probably extravagant. But of course, getting there is just so dangerous and tricky that I don't think anyone's going to try to do that anymore. So that was pretty cool when the mine was rediscovered, because it's been lost for years, and then even just more so for the cabin when they finally found it. That's what Mark. That's how that was that year that Mark became Bigfooter of the Year in 2023. So that was pretty cool for sure. Yeah, talk about NBC. Okay. How about then? The American faked it. Okay. So pretty. And then so it's a pretty interesting event. What came of it. Afterwards, they one of the miners, Fred Beck, actually came out with a little book telling the stories about it. And unfortunately, like the book didn't have a long printing. It wasn't in print for very long, and books that are in print are very, very expensive. Excuse me, and very, very rare. And but there is, I am actually looking at it right now. Just complete coincidence. When I was talking to Mark, he told me that there is. I was like, Mark, any chance you give me one of your copies of your book? He said, ha 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 ha. No. I'm like, oh man, worth a shot. But he did tell me that there is a digital copy of the book online, and not like an ebook, but literally you just scroll down and everything's there. So, and it's just complete coincidence. While I was writing notes for this and everything, I actually accidentally found this. I'm like, huh, what are the odds? So I will post a link to that on the Facebook page. So again, if you're not following it, you really should be. Facebook.com/Cryptid Talk. If there was going to be a time for you to follow the Facebook page so you can see the stuff I'm going to be posting, this is the episode to do it. Because I'm going to be posting a link to of this article of this book that he did digitally, so that you can read it. It's a little bit long, but again, the actual book itself, I think Mark told me, was not very long. Maybe only like 30, 50 pages or so. Nothing crazy. So it's really not that long, but I think it might take you a little bit to read it. But it's definitely worth the read because it tells the story from the man who was there himself, telling the story about it. It has some pictures and everything. So I'll post out on the Facebook page if you want to give that a read as well. So that's Ape Canyon. The men that supposedly killed a Bigfoot because they were startled by it, or just didn't know what it was, shot it, killed it, and then all hell broke loose. So what can we? So what all right. So what do we know about Ape Canyon for sure? Well, the interesting thing about it is that what the story of Ape Canyon, of what happened, of the men shooting at the Bigfoot and then ending up killing one, and then of course then all the aggression that came afterwards, is definitely something that's not unheard of. I mean, obviously, the stories of a Bigfoot being killed are very few and far between. But the amount of stories of the Bigfoot of people shooting at a Bigfoot, and then the amount of anger and aggression that it has towards it, that towards them, shows aggression, towards the people that shot her person. I know they would, do the whole thing of, like the generic of like a bluff charge, or actually charging, and like throwing things, loud screams and howls and hitting whatever they're in and stuff like that. Like, that is not unheard of. A lot of stories like that have happened of people, like didn't know what they're looking at, scared and startled, fired at it. Now, whether than most time, some people say the bullets hit it, but it did it caused like no damage at all whatsoever. And then and then of course then all the aggression that came from the Bigfoot after the fact. Hello there. And so all that came from it, it's just all this all because it happened because the men didn't know what they were looking at. It scared them, and they just fired at it. The interesting thing is that, like a lot of these stories, especially this one in particular, the Bigfoot wasn't doing anything. The Bigfoot literally was just looking at these men, like wondering, like, what are you guys like? What are you doing up here? I haven't seen you. Like, who or what are you, kind of thing. And then of course, the men are like a lot of people, especially early on in the days, like, what's that? And they would shoot questions, shoot first, ask questions later, kind of thing. So it's not like this Bigfoot was doing anything. It wasn't acting aggressive or like attacking them or anything. It was just literally just looking, men startled by what they don't understand. And next thing you know, shot the creature the first time, it ran away. But the second time, they ow, you little bastard, landed killing blows on it, which then made all hell break loose, like complete hell. And so many interesting things, like obviously, these men were terrified by the incidents that the incident bleh, by everything that happened during it. But in the end, though, they were all, if they had never had shot it, they were just like, like more so just stunned in fear by what they saw and couldn't move. The events of everything could have been so much different. For all we know, the Bigfoot probably wouldn't have attacked because one of theirs wouldn't have died. They, they probably would have been there much longer and would have been able to get the gold, from it, and did what they need to do there. And probably a lot these men, maybe besides just saying, hey, we saw this hairy thing up there, but we too scared to do anything about it, you know might have been, may not have been, these men probably wouldn't even be known to the world at all. They would just be some miners that were up there, saw some hairy creature man thing, a mountain devil, a hairy man, and then everyone been like, nah, whatever, who cares, kind of thing. But the fact that everything happened the way it did made it into the extravagant legend and story that it is today. And I think there's a lot of stuff that we can learn and take back from this. Like, it's interesting because there are so many stories that I've heard of people who've talked about that. I saw Bigfoot and it went across the road and it was so fast, or they just saw this thing peeking behind a tree and and they weren't ready for how it looked, and it look disturbed them and terrified them and everything. Just simple stuff like that. A lot of stories of Bigfoot, of people seeing them, have happened of Bigfoot actually doing nothing. Nothing terrifying, nothing scary, literally just walking or just looking. But because people were not prepared for that, some people just, that alone has terrified some people. Like, I don't want to go into the woods. I don't go out at night in the woods anymore, or I don't go alone, or something like that. Just from the thing, just looking at them, not not doing anything scary. But of course, then you do have the stories of them, like bluff charging people, throwing things at them, like shaking their cars, they're in their cabins, their houses, like more aggressive behavior. And then people are like, oh my god, I was terrified. This thing was trying to get to us. Sure, yeah, that's a bit more reasonable why to be scared. But of course, we're having these people like, that just like this thing moved unreasonably fast than what it should, and that enough terrified me. Not saying that that is not a terrifying thing, for sure, but obviously in the case, of like Bigfoot, Sasquatch was still not a thing, or at least, like, didn't really have the name yet. That people were not really aware of these things. And obviously, of course, Yeti was still a new thing, but of course, been like, like whatever. Probably not a lot of people, pay attention to that. Then of course, then we have this story and everything that came from it, and it kind of just makes you wonder of like this was a prime example of nothing happened, and yet it terrified them, and then blam blam blam, and then something happened. It's crazy just what one difference would have made this story to making going from these men being some of the five most well-known men in the Bigfooting world to, oh, they didn't shoot the thing. Fred Beck, who the heck's that guy? Like, these people would be nobodies. No one would know or even cared about them. At least as much, if they even came back, even mentioned, hey, we saw this like hairy man kind of thing. I mean, sure, they were making noise and like little stuff here and there, before the incident happened, but I think these things were just curious of like, hey, who's up here in our area? Like, what's going on, kind of thing. And of course, then they shot and killed the one Bigfoot, and then all hell broke loose. The non scary thing happened, and then the scary thing happened. So these guys got hit with the double whammy of the Bigfoot. Nothing happened to then shit hit the fan for sure. So it's a Ape Canyon is like, I've always heard of Ape Canyon, but I've learned more about it over the years, and then of course, obviously, from Mark and everything, learning more about him. So I wasn't able to get a quote from Mark, but I tried to, but I think he's just busy and just wasn't able to. But our last guest we had on our show, our good friend Matt Pruitt, the one of the director and editor of Bigfoot and Beyond with Cliff and Bobo, and was also also during the recording team for Finding Bigfoot when it was in the air. I asked him if he could give me a quote about what the importance of Ape Canyon. And so, if Mark ever gives me one after the fact, I will post it on the Facebook page. No, excuse me. But here is the quote that I got from the very wonderful and talented Matt Pruitt. Quote. Oh, and also some of this stuff talks about some of like the tribes in the area. I'm probably gonna butcher some of these, so I'm gonna try my best. So I apologize for anyone who might be Native American or anything like that. All right, so from Matt Pruitt, quote: "The Ape Canyon saga is important for a number of reasons, in my estimation, but primarily because it represents one of the first encounter claims involving multiple witnesses who have reported to the media and distributed nationwide. Among the coverage released in the aftermath of the event were articles written for the Oregonian by the Klalam tribal member Georg Totsky. In these articles, Totsky explicitly made the connection between the ape-like animals described by the miners and the similar creatures described by indigenous peoples of the region. As far as I can tell, these articles marked the first associations made in print between both the indigenous indigenous traditions and the modern reports offered by non-natives regarding the Sasquatch phenomenon." End quote. Fantastic quote we got from Matt from there for sure. Because that he did make a really good point that this is one of the first real well-known nationwide stories of multiple witnesses of seeing a Bigfoot. Because a lot of times it's at least one, maybe two people had saw something, but not multiple people had witnessing this attack of of people being of just anything as monumental as this. And then, of course, then especially in the Pacific Northwest and just areas in general where the indigenous people of the area have told or been known of these creatures, or at least these other tribes, these hairy tribes, long before before people from Europe started colonizing the areas. And so if they're getting connection of these guys saw this, and then they're going back to stories of these ape-like creatures described in the indigenous peoples of all these areas, they're also all right. These guys obviously saw something, because again, besides the Yeti thing, being well known there, it still wasn't that well known of a thing as it is today. Whereas most people are like, oh, hairy man. I go, well, what's that? I've never heard of that before. Now nowadays, it's like, it's hard to at least not, even if people don't believe, at least everyone at some point has heard of Bigfoot at some way. Now, obviously, back then, it's not as not as well known, but still still just the fact that they had this they had this whole thing around. What's interesting is that, going back to saying that the people saying that they faked it, it kind of goes to why people think that the people would fake the Patterson and Gimlin footage. Bigfoot was still not really much of a thing at all, if not at all. So why would they fake it to where they will, why would they fake something like that, especially where there's supposed to be gold up there and they were not there long? Why would they come up? How would they come up with this very specific, weird story of them seeing these giant hairy men, these mountain devils, throwing rocks at their cabin and terrorizing them throughout the night? Why? How could someone come up with that? I would say the creativity of modern day people today is a lot higher because we have all this material. Back then, they had nothing. They would have no material to go off of this. Again, they might have had a little bit of the Yeti stuff, but again, not much. There really wasn't much. Same thing goes to the Patterson and Gimlin footage. If that was truly someone in a costume and they wanted to fake it, why would they give it breasts? A man would not think, oh, I'm gonna make a costume. I'm gonna give her breasts. No, people would not think about that. They would think, I'm just gonna make just a man, like a male costume, and that be it. I'm not gonna give it breasts or anything like that. That'd be weird, kind of thing. They just wouldn't. Come on, get over here. They just wouldn't come up with that, like, at all. Like they it just be very odd for them to come up with something like that. So, ow, don't bite me. So now it's like, so that I just don't think that they didn't fake it. They were terrified from people that they talked to, like, right after, and like they were just showing how shaken up and disturbed they were by the whole encounter itself. So what do I think about Ape Canyon? Well, I believe 100% that Ape Canyon, with the story of the miners being attacked by all those Bigfoot throwing things at them, I believe is real. I believe it happened. These miners truly did see these. They saw a Bigfoot that they unfortunately then killed, but then they also did see the shadows and all these things that happened to them of the creatures, throwing rocks and boulders at their cabin, trying to get them out of there, and you're like, get out of our home, kind of thing. I truly believe Ape Canyon happened. The story was true, and they are not lying. Like, so see now, because like it's such an incredible story, especially for that time period of like, how could someone don't your claws at me? How could someone even how could someone come up with that? They people just couldn't back then. So it would just be a hard story as enough it is to think of. Like, people wouldn't then want to think of a story of like, oh, why we weren't there anymore. Let's say they come up with some weird story of like, oh, they're embarrassed by something, they have to come up with some creature, like hairy men, kind of thing. It's like, no, Ape Canyon happened, and it's an incredible, amazing story of stuff that I believe that we can learn from. Of one, don't cheat at Bigfoot. A lot of times Bigfoot just do bluff charges, trying to get you. Like, if they're showing you any sort of like normal aggression, it kind of means like, hey, you're in my territory, or you're near my food, or you're near my source of water. I don't want you here. Please leave. Kind of thing. They now nowadays that humans are dangerous. With our guns and everything like that, and so they try not to bring too much attention to themselves. They bring reason to bring harm to themselves. In most cases, are all Bigfoot like that? No. It's kind of like how not all people are nice and innocent, and are not murderers, stuff like that. Bigfoot probably are in the same way, that Bigfoot, some Bigfoot, don't want trouble, some Bigfoot don't care, and they will, kill or attack someone in some way. So, Ape Canyon happened, and it's one of the most fascinating stories in Bigfoot history in all time. And I believe that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's Ape Canyon. Obviously, I didn't give a super duper deep dive into it and everything, but I'm gonna be posting some links onto the Facebook page today. So again, if you haven't followed, make sure you follow it. But I'm gonna be posting Mark Marcel's page that he gave me last time when we had him on as a guest. I'm gonna put his aquarium on there, so if you ever want to learn where his aquarium is in Westport, Washington, if you're ever over there, make sure you go give him a hey and say hey, and then you say, hey, Mike from Cryptid Talk, said hey, kind of thing. And I'll also be posting the book that Fred Beck made after the incident of Ape Canyon happened, because it is a fantastic story, and of course, when the documentary comes out, I'll be sure to post a link to it on the Facebook page. So again, facebook.com/Cryptid Talk. Follow it so you can see all the nice, fun, juicy stuff that we will be talking about for sure. There's anything else? I don't think so. I think I've been after watching the documentary, and I'm like, all right, if I haven't done it like in an event one yet, like anything like of a specific event, but I'm like, all right, I have to do Ape Canyon. It motivated me to do Ape Canyon, so we'll go from there. And maybe we'll talk about if you want to hear another interesting event. I think I might do. I don't know when I'll do it, but I have an idea what the next one might be and stuff like that. And if you know a Bigfoot, you probably might have an idea as well. So I hope everyone enjoyed this one. I hope it was informative. Again, obviously, I know I'm not the most super duper informative person when it came to this, but I kind of just gave a little snippet and a brief idea of it. But I'll post a link to the book that Fred Beck did. And you just read that. It gives a lot more details, a lot more into it because it's from the man himself. And yeah, and of course, when the documentary comes up, I'll be sure to see because you will have to watch it. It's like you want a movie night to watch with the family. This is the documentary. This is the film to do it with. So I hope everyone hope everyone has a good day, good weekend, good week, good month. Summer is coming up to us soon, and and I got my expedition next month, so I'll be sure to talk about that. Hopefully, if anything good happens, interesting happens, you guys will be the first ones I share it to, and I will share with the whole story and all. So I hope everyone has a good day. And remember, keep your ears and eyes open for the creepiness in store, because you never know what you'll find outside of your door. This has been Cryptid Talk with Michael Mann. Have a good day, everyone. Stay safe. Love you all.